on new challenges for international science collaborations. My name is Anna Quire, and I'm the chair of the session. So we're going to change the format a little bit from what is in the published prospectus. We are going to keep the same order of speakers, but we're going to shorten their speeches such that we have 20-minute talks for each speaker, and then we're going to have a panel discussion. So between speakers, we will have time for 1 or 2 questions relating to that speaker's points. Then we're going to try and stay on time with this. But then if you have sort of bigger picture questions or more wide-ranging questions, please hold those for the panel discussion. We were hoping for a robust dialogue among folks. Okay, with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Dr. Amy Flatten is serving as the Director of International Affairs of the American Physical Society, where she develops international scientific exchanges, collaborations, and partnerships with physics institutions around the globe. Prior to joining APS, Dr. Flatten served nearly 5 years with the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, which we've heard a lot about today, where she managed international S&T initiatives involving government, academia, and industry on behalf of the U.S. President's Science Advisor. From 1995 to 2005, she also held a faculty position with the Johns Hopkins Part-Time Engineering and Applied Sciences Program, where she received the 2000 Excellence in Teaching Award. With that, please welcome Dr. Flatten. And so you can use this. Use the lapel mic.
I'll use the lapel mic.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I know that there are a lot of parallel sessions going on, and I think I'm getting a little echo from the mic. Is that a little better? Yeah, okay, good. What was interesting to me is tying my particular presentation into the theme of this session. And the title for this session is New Challenges for International Collaboration. And I'd like to tweak that a little bit. When there's a challenge, there's an opportunity. So I'd like to have my presentation focus on new opportunities for international collaboration. And what does that mean coming from the Director of International Affairs for the APS? Well, the APS, how many of you are familiar with the international programs at APS? Okay, good. And is there a way to advance this page down? There we go. I'm going to give you a little bit of history on the international programs of APS, but before I start, how many of you would have suspected this? This is 24 plus of the members of the APS come from outside the United States. We're the American Physical Society, and nearly a quarter of our members live outside of our country. And so, yeah, question on this? Isn't this cool? So let me give some background, and some of you may predate me with the APS. I came to the APS from OSTP, the White House Science Office, in 2004. And I followed my predecessor. How many of you knew Irving Lurch? Okay, good. Well, Irving was instrumental in that he started the international office at APS. And he assumed a very ambassadorial role, representing APS in international fora around the world. And when I came, we shifted from an ambassadorial role to a program development role. And I think the leadership at that time saw the international office as sort of a boutique operation of the APS. And not only that, our international activities were stovepiped. And one of the things that we would talk about is how international affairs cuts across all aspects of the APS. And you already know this, but just to remind people, for example, it's more than just travel programs for young people. In education, we're competing for the world's best and brightest scientists in the United States. Industry, companies are increasingly international or multinational. Policy, our U.S. government policies affect the way that U.S. scientists can collaborate internationally and affect the way we can bring guest scientists from outside the United States to work in our laboratories. So all of these issues affect APS. And by the way, our journals are primarily, Dan Culp would be able to tell us this, but about 2/3 of the authors in the APS journals come from outside of the United States. Dan Culp is our assistant editor for APS, and he's in the back, so I think I botched her title, but nonetheless. What we tried to do when I came to APS is to raise the profile of international activities within the society and create an ongoing, sustainable program of international offerings that connected the international office to the units and to the members and to our colleagues in other departments within the organization. And what we were hearing from the leadership, and I'll spend a little time on this history, we were hearing things like the members don't care about international. We have IUPAP. We already have international collaborations in physics. APS doesn't need to deal with international. And we went back through some of the surveys of the members, and our own members felt that the APS wasn't dealing with issues that they cared about. They weren't dealing with issues relevant to their country or their community, and they welcomed a more international outlook from the APS. We started working with the APS president and saying, what are your interests in international? And in 2009, Cherry Murray, who many of you know, I bet, asked the Committee on International Scientific Affairs, an advisory committee to APS, to answer 2 questions. Do we have the right international voice in our governance, and are we serving the international members properly? Well, we knew that we weren't serving the international members properly. In terms of the international voice in our governance meaning our 40-person APS Council, there is one person designated to represent the international community, one international counselor. I called them the planetary counselor. Yeah. So we proposed increasing that number from 1 to 4. To make a long story short, it required a vote of the APS membership, and at that time, that vote passed to have more international voices in the APS governance. It passed with the highest percentage of votes in the history of APS at that time. That sent a clear message to the APS leadership that the members cared about international. At that time, we had a new leadership. Kate Kirby was coming in, a very internationally minded presidential line. And when the new strategic plan, the first ever strategic plan for the APS was created in 2013, expanding international engagement was a key pillar of that plan. We felt like we got the rock from the bottom of the hill to the top, and hence the rest of my talk. What does that mean? Expanding international engagement. How many of you remember corporate reform? Okay, this was a big initiative of the APS to restructure itself. So although we had a key aspect and goal to expand our international engagement, what does that mean? And that meant creating a task force on expanding international engagement to really put the meat on the bones. And that was delayed a little bit because of corporate reform, and that was a good decision. Our thinking really matured. So what was this task force? This is a group of 12 individuals that represented a cross-section of the APS. And I want to acknowledge Bill Cole-Glazer for serving as vice chair. And you'll see a lot of people on this task force that represent the community that's at this April meeting. Patty McBride, Young-Kee Kim, John Bagger, all from the particle physics community. Laura Green, a past president of the APS. And here's what they were asked to do. And then I'll tell you what they really did. But basically, put meat on the bones and ask themselves and find out from our constituents, what should we really be trying to accomplish when we, quote, quote, expand our international engagement? And that's a difficult task because you look at the physics communities across the globe and there's simply no one size that fits all. So we can't really come up with a single cohesive answer. And also, international engagement is more than just programmatic collaborations. There are issues within our own US government or other governments that affect our ability to engage internationally, so we needed to take a look at those as well. So a lot of people asked me, and the task force deliberated this a lot, and the APS has deliberated this a lot over the years. Is expanding international engagement really a marketing strategy? Are we trying to increase our international membership? And so I wanted to put this slide up to give you two underlying assumptions that guided the work of the task force. These were the guiding principles. Okay, under the rubrics or the bullet, international partnerships strengthen the American Physical Society. That's a nice statement, but what does that really mean? And these are nice bullets, but what we really mean by them is we are very respectful of the fact that there are partner physical societies around the globe, and we are by no means trying to poach from their members. We are not trying to exploit this international engagement to grow our own international membership. If we offer more services and attract more members, then we're proud of that. And we by no means want to be the 800-pound gorilla. We don't intend to be the world's physical society or in any ways usurp the role of IUPAP. And of course, we recognize that international collaboration strengthens physics in the United States. And here you're seeing a nod to some of the policy issues that affect the ability of scientists in our own country to engage internationally, as well as our ability to host international scientists. This item in blue, you'll see that theme a lot. We noticed that physicists will belong to their own national or regional physical society, and then to the APS. So they may not belong to the Brazilian Physical Society and the Chinese Physical Society, but they'll belong to the Brazilian Physical Society and APS. They'll belong to the Chinese Physical Society and APS. And this gives APS an opportunity to serve as a melting pot that's consistent with the American identity of our country as a melting pot, and consequently be a global hub for physicists. Physicists cross continents to come to our meetings. We want to honor that through our international engagement. So we put up a slide with a bunch of smart people that represented all parts of the society, but the task force was not presumptuous enough to sit in a room and think big thoughts in a vacuum on what should the society do. The task force reached out to absolutely every element of the APS. We had the opportunity through the American Institute of Physics to conduct a survey of 10,000 APS members. We also reached out to the executive committee of every APS unit. The entire list is up there. We reached out to our partner national physical societies, reached out to IUPAP, and more importantly, we reached inward. I talked about all of the programs within APS, the journals, the education department, the government affairs office. We reached out to all of them to say, what should we be doing? The board of directors, the presidential line, no stone was left unturned. Sometimes we reached out in essay questions, and sometimes we reached out in survey questions. There were two questions that were consistently presented to all stakeholders. And I'm going to just quickly go through those to give you an idea of what the values of the different groups were. Our first question, essentially, what should expanded international engagement by the APS accomplish? And you'll see the choices in the horizontal axis. And you can see the groups. And you'll see that I'm very heartened to say that the senior staff, the light green there, was very eager to integrate international engagement in their own programs. I think that we all universally agreed that one of the key priorities and one of the things that the APS could and should be focusing upon is preparing young physicists for global opportunities. I think that's said loud and clear by all of the members and likewise by the editors and the senior staff, everyone. And a few outliers there. When you download the slides, you can take a closer look. Also, I have all of this in the formal report here. The leadership, that was kind of interesting. Incentives for physicists outside the U.S. to belong to their own physical society in the APS. We'll see what happens with that. Second question. First one was on programs. This one was on essentially policy issues. What are the cross-cutting issues that involve actions in physical society? But America has served as a melting pot, and APS can as well. And of course, we'll be creating a roadmap with our International Advisory Committee that Bill serves on. How do we do this over the long term? How do we ensure that this report just doesn't sit on the shelf? And of course, committing resources, and I would say things look good there, but we need to keep our momentum in order to convey to the leadership that we are serious, we are moving forward, and this is an investment that is worth making. And so I conclude with these words from the task force report. They aren't mine, but I think they're beautiful and they're eloquent. Doing all of these things will not only benefit APS members, but will help us to serve physicists across the globe. And that's our real hope, and that's our real endeavor. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Shall we take one or two questions if there are any specific questions for her talk? And if not, hold your bigger picture questions for the panel. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Sure.